So I already filmed this video once and then I went to edit it and found out that the entire thing is out of focus. So this is take two. Hi everybody, it's Jade, and to celebrate the beginning of spooky season, I've decided to set myself a little horror challenge. Now, I think, as I've mentioned in the past, Darren Shan used to be one of my favourite authors, and I haven't read any of his books in a long time, and I've been meaning to reread them. So because all of his books that I own are horror themed or thriller themed, I figured, why not read them all in October? And then I looked at how many I have, and I just still decided that I'm going to do this. So this is the Darren Shan-athon. So what I'm going to do is I'm setting myself the challenge of reading every Darren Shan book that I own by the end of October. And I set that challenge before I counted how many of his books I owned. So, as it stands, I have set myself the challenge of reading 30 books in 31 days. We'll see how that goes. I am prioritising certain series over others, and I'll tell you which order that I'm planning on reading them in just a second. So I'm going for the bigger series first, and then some of the shorter series later if I can get to them, but I am still hoping that I can get to 30 books. Not The first series that I'm going to go for is the Saga of Darren Shan. This is a 12-book series that I'm now going to put down and just talk about the first one. Yes, it's a 12-book series about vampires, the first one being Cirque du Freak. And as you can see, each of these is only at most 200 pages long, I believe. Let me just see. Yeah, not even. 183 pages for this. So reading one a day of these is definitely doable. And this was my favourite series of Darren Shan's. It's also the longest, so that's why I've prioritised it first. But the Saga of Darren Shan, I'll go into more detail in either my wrap-up video, or I could do a wrap-up for each series and go into more details of what happens in each book. I mean, obviously that would be very spoilery, but, you know. Anyway, the story of Cirque du Freak follows a character called Darren Shan who becomes a vampire, and it's the story of him learning to accept that and then trying to fit in with vampire culture and all of that stuff, and it's just very, very good from what I remember. And the next book series that I'm going to go for is the Demonata Series, which is 10 books long. Once again, I'm going to put these down and just talk with the first one. These are a little bit longer, but we're still only 300 pages. The first book in this series is Lord Loss. This one, as you can probably tell from the series title, Demonata, is about demons and werewolves. And I also really enjoyed this series when I was younger. I am hoping, rereading these, that I'm not going to be too old for them now, but I have also read some of his adult horror, and I feel like it translates quite well. Just his writing style doesn't change too drastically, so I am hoping that I'm still going to really enjoy this, because the whole storyline is still really interesting, regardless of who it is aimed at. So yes, that is another 10 books, so we're at 22 books so far, that I'm going to try and get to. Next, mixing up from series, we're going to go for a standalone, which is The Thin Executioner. This is the chunkiest book, but it is also just a standalone by itself. This one is more of an alternate universe, whereas the Demonata and the Saga of Darren Shan are set in this universe. This one is an alternate universe kind of fantasy story following the son of the town's executioner going on a quest, if I'm remembering rightly, going on a quest to prove that he is like worthy of taking his father's title when it comes to it, because he's like very scrawny and thin and, you know, not man enough to handle the axe type thing. But the world building in this is really good, and there is still a scene from this that, even though it's been years since I read it, I can still imagine vividly in my head, just because the way he described it was so visceral and like, ugh, that it's just stuck with me. So I am excited for this one as well. Next, and we're getting to the point where I'm like hoping that I can get to these, but I'm not sure I will be able to. We are going to go for the Latin Crepsley series. This is a prequel series to the Darren Shan saga. Latin Crepsley is Darren Shan's mentor. He's the vampire that turned him into a vampire. And that's the fourth one. Yeah. And the first one in this series is Birth of the Killer. And yeah, it in the same way that the Darren Shan saga followed Darren's journey into vampirism and accepting who he was and everything, the Latin Crepsley saga is the same but for Latin Crepsley, because in the Darren Shan saga, he is a very mysterious but very interesting character, so I like the fact that we get backstory for him here. And the final Darren Shan series that I own is the City series. And yes, this does annoy me. Seriously, book publishers, can we stop doing this, please? It's not even like this is a hardback, which is an issue in my Demonata series, where I have some paperbacks and some hardbacks, because I was just impatient when they were coming out and was like, I need to read it now, so I'm going to buy the hardback regardless of the fact that I have paperbacks for the other ones. But this there's no call for this. Why have the first two this size and then the last one this size? Like, what? Anyway, mini rant over. The City series, starting with Procession of the Dead, was Darren Shan's first adult horror series, and I have to say I did enjoy it less than all of the other series when I first read it, because to me his move into adult horror just seemed to be make it more sexual, not make it more scary, because, as I will go into more detail, he does a very good job of painting a gruesome scene in his children's horror books. So that was not lacking at any point in the previous series anyway. This is also much more grounded in reality. There's a bit of, like, from what I remember, like a mafia subplot type thing. This follows a man who's moving either back to or into a town that has a lot of mystery surrounding it, specifically the man who runs it, called the Cardinal. There's some kind of like weird connection between the city and the Cardinal, in that they're almost like one being, and like supernatural stuff does start to unravel, and there is a lot of tension and a lot of twists in this that I can't remember because it's been so long since I've read it. So that is why I'm still like, even though this was like my least favourite out of all of these, which is also why it's at the end of the list, I am still excited to try and read this. So yeah, normally at the end of my TBRs I would hold up the ones that I want to read and show you, but there are 30 books on the floor now. So, and I'm not going to really have to do that without them just going everywhere. So, yes, I think because a reading challenge like this is going to send me a little bit insane, I may do a bit of a reading vlog at some point this month. I also do think that instead of like a big wrap-up, I may do a couple of little wrap-ups when I finish each series and go more into detail about each series, a bit like the Illumini Files review I did last video, but instead of doing just one book, I'm going to do the whole series, and then just describe the series as a whole instead of going book by book. But my next video will be the September wrap-up, which will come out next week. And until then, I will say goodbye.